Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
A Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts.
I have to say, you know, the way you say about people involved in crime and that, what was it all for? I mean, Martin the Viper Foley, 74 years of age, losing his home in Cashel Avenue in Kimmage, which is where he's lived all his life. He hasn't even sort of been hugely upwardly mobile for decades. I mean, he's been there since the year dot. Since he sort of made it onto the scene. And it's all over a massive, big sort of tax debt he has run up. There was a Criminal Assets Bureau case.
There was a Criminal Assets Bureau
revenue settlement thing, was it? And
it was a Criminal Assets Bureau case, and he appealed it all the way to the Supreme Court. So all of that and the interest on the payments, which are still being added yesterday.
Fines, another 55,000 on top of it.
So all of that has really landed him in the position he's in, not solely just the cab judgment, but the background of that cab case, which, not to go into it because it went on and on for many years, but ultimately he's been hit with costs, and as we've seen in recent court cases, the costs can far exceed any award. So Martin Foley is, as you said, he's described as a 74-year-old pensioner yesterday. Still looks well and healthy, it has to be said, but he's facing losing his home. We heard in court his wife, Sonia, who was a registered director on his debt collecting business, that she is saying that she is entitled to half of the house effectively. She described herself as being a unemployed social welfare recipient. She's defending CAB's application for charging relief against her family home. So effectively, she's saying she got married to Mr. Foley on 2013, and she'd lived in Cashel Avenue ever since, and she's not liable for or in any way connected with the claimed debt and owed no debt to CAB.
That's what she is going to fight. But is that the case? If you're married, do your debts...
Well, I suppose there is an argument to be made. I don't know the specifics of it. She obviously married him when he had a degree of debt, but once you are married, I suppose...
You're seen as one unit, though, are you not?
Well, you are, but I don't know if you're seen as one unit. Clearly her case is going to be that she has a 50% interest in the family home now, and whatever debt he accrued before, they can only take half the home, really, to pay off that debt. She shouldn't be hit with that burden.
More time now before the courts, and all the while this judgment and the amount of money at the bottom is growing.
Yeah, I mean, the court added a further 55,000 to an outstanding judgment against Foley for 916,000. So it's reaching £1 million. I mean, a house in Crumlin or Kimmage, as it's described here, would be worth...
Worth what?
Well, it's something approaching 350. I don't know. That's just a guess.
So it's only going to be a portion of that debt anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, where else can they get the money from Foley? I'm not sure Foley ever... seems to have anyway squirreled away a fortune. I mean, like the last we were speaking of him, he was going down the country to do, to call upon people who owed debts to others. And we worked out that he was earning, a few £100 for his day's work.
Yeah.
It's not a fortune, and he's 74. What is he going to do at this stage of his life legally that is going to get him that money together to pay off the debt?
No, I mean, it's the debt collection business has gone on, but you can see the amounts that are involved. It tends to be, a lot of it is sort of subcontractors who seek debts off businessmen effectively, or so you're talking 5-figure debts at a very maximum. I think there was one 10,000, there was another one 14,000. So you're talking, even if that debt is collected, he'd be entitled to a proportion of it. But you're still talking hundreds of euros, you're driving around the country, spending hours doing this sort of stuff. It's not going to pay off that debt. So I suppose they can't get blood out of a stone.
No, that's kind of what I'm saying. You can't really. Can you get blood out of a stone?
You can't, but obviously...
there is that one asset, though, which is the family home, which has been identified now as it'll go some of the way if he loses it. But imagine at 74 years of age facing losing your home.
Exactly. And I mean, of course, his wife passed away in natural causes.
His second wife, isn't it? And he has a child.
He has a young child. He obviously had a family, a previous, grown-up daughters from a previous marriage. His wife died tragically from an illness. So he's a 74-year-old dad of a young child. So that must be a worry, of course, because you don't want to, you have a young child. It's a huge expense. And
so let's go back to where it started with him. And of course, that was in the heart of the General's organisation.
Yeah, I mean...
He was one of the General's men.
He was one of his, I suppose he was described as an enforcer. Martin Foley was born in Derry, actually, and moved to Dublin at a young age. He became involved in crime at a very early age. He had a reputation as a hard man, I think a justified reputation. But he became involved with Martin Foley and played Martin Cahill, and suspected of playing a role in some of the General's most infamous heists, I suppose.
Like Russborough.
And, some of the jewellery robberies.
Yeah. And Russborough, I think, when those paintings were stolen, and there's still some missing paintings, and there's a lot of mystery and, intrigue around where they are. And at various times it's suggested that, Foley claims to know things about it, and he will always deny that he does, but he's always sort of in that intriguing mix around that Russborough story.
Yeah.
He was, back in the day, and probably still now, he was somebody who he had that same attitude as the General, or was he sort of following his boss? Was he involved in some sort of a criminals against
what happened,
community or something, which was a kind of a kickback to the community against drugs?
Well, what happened was, of course, that Martin Foley and Martin Cahill, they became very, very infamous. They were probably the most successful organised crime outfit of their day. But that put them in direct conflict with the IRA, effectively. The IRA, at that stage in Dublin, as well as in the north, saw themselves as the people who oversaw organised crime. And Martin Cahill was not willing to pay the usual sort of subservient role to the provost. He even, of course, famously was accused of famously trying to sell the paintings to the Loyalists, which was said to have angered the IRA. At that time as well, it was the heroin boom had begun in Dublin. It sparked an epidemic, a huge amount of deaths in the northern south inner cities. Turned communities kind of rose up against the people selling heroin, and Cahill and his associates got blamed for being drug dealers, which Cahill at least took grave offence to. And he set up an organisation called Concerned Criminals Against Drugs. And Martin Foley became the face of it.
Yeah. Wouldn't he sort of issue statements and
they did a few marches themselves,
masked,
saying they were criminals against drugs as well. But a lot of that was in part driven by this sort of conflict with the IRA, who had, at least they accused of putting out that they were involved in heroin dealing. So ultimately that kind of put them in direct conflict, and Martin Foley, ultimately the IRA attempted to abduct him one night, and that was one of the many, I suppose, times he narrowly escaped with his life. I think I could be wrong, is it 14 times he's been shot in total?
Some amount of bullets, some famous amount of bullets that apparently he carries around in his body.
Yeah.
But he survived again and again, but he was very fit always, didn't he? Keep himself very fit, which actually nearly led to his death on a number of occasions
Yeah.
because he regularly went to the gyms
Yeah.
and swimming pools and was targeted outside
Because
them.
because he did the IRA ultimately attempted to abduct him and kill him. He was also shot in 1995 outside Fatima Mansions. In 1996, he was also shot by Brian Meehan. And then again, he was shot in 2000 as he left the swimming pool in Terranure. And the most recent
2000, right? Yeah.
And the most recent shooting was, I think, in 2008, when he had become involved in a dispute with the Kinahan cartel, and they were meant to have ordered his execution. He was said to have become involved in a dispute with money directly with Christy Kinahan Sr. because Martin Foley, while never convicted, sort of became linked in with the drugs trade, or at least being accused of being involved. So he survived all of those assassination attempts.
And that one, in the last one, there was a number of names sort of put forward from the Kinahan organisation at the time as somebody who...
Yeah, I mean...
but wasn't James Quinn, who was his own nephew's name, put forward?
Well, James Quinn's name was put forward. James Quinn was probably one of his nephew, but also a real devoted figure to Daniel Kinahan, who would ultimately move over to Marbella and live next to Kinahan. And as
a kind of an in-house hitman for the Kinahan organisation.
Yeah, and is believed to have, or obviously has been convicted in relation to the murder of Gary Hutch. There was other people as well. Dean Howe was arrested in connection with it, but never convicted or never charged with any offence. But he is ultimately said to have settled his disagreement with the Kinahan cartel.
He's never mellowed, has he, Foley? Like, given, he's 74.
Yeah.
So who else? What age is Gilligan? About 70s?
Well, Gilligan is in his early 70s. He would have also been a contemporary of a type of Foley.
There's the missing John Cunningham, wherever he is. He must be probably in his 70s now as well.
Yeah.
Last seen with Christy Kinahan Sr. in charge of the Kinahan organisation in 2010.
And of course, John Cunningham would have also been involved with Foley and Cahill.
And we have Georgie Mitchell, who must be hitting 70 now as well.
Georgie Mitchell be 70. I mean, Cunningham would have been directly involved with them, and would have earned his nickname, the Colonel, as in planning some of those robberies. So
did you just see how that word was spelled?
No, I did. Yeah.
Did you? Is that like a beautiful mind? Did you see the letters on the wall?
I did. I saw it in my head.
Colonel.
I called up Emer yesterday as well on leafy suburb. I was saying, it's a really loads of leaves. So it's one of those things that you're used to reading.
Slightly overused, isn't it?
It's slightly overused term.
But yeah, I mean, isn't it extraordinary that that group of those have all survived, lasted?
They have. But I mean, there's many that have fallen along the way. Shavo Hogan,
that's very true.
Paddy Shanahan. There's so many of them that died violently, and then others that have passed away of natural causes. But Foley,
But you've survived that many attempts on your life. You're 74 and fighting fit. Maybe you don't really give a hoot about a bill that somebody else would lose sleep over. He's clearly just bedded in. He's going to fight it every which way he can through the courts, the John Gilligan style of, delay. And at 74, I suppose if he gets another couple of years out of the delay process, they're going to evict an 80-year-old?
Well, I wouldn't say they wouldn't. But yeah, it's he's a great survivor in one way, but he became somebody who used the courts as well.
The family home, though, is still, I know it's not totally protected under Irish law, but it does seem to be very strong when it comes to anything like these. And often you see in the Criminal Assets Bureau cases, even during settlements, that the family home will sort of be protected and left alone because there is an attitude that the courts don't like throwing out.
No, especially when there's young children involved.
Exactly.
Absolutely. They don't. But I suppose Foley turned to the courts. He sued various people over the years, including newspapers, but he also didn't win a case against the state in relation to Charlie Bowden because Charlie Bowden had admitted shooting or being involved in one of the shooting attempts.
And did he get loads of money?
He got a good bit of money at the time, over 100,000. But he also had various other cases. But it's just this Criminal Assets Bureau case really, really has backfired. And we've seen this, a lot of those people we spoke about, including Georgie Mitchell, brought these cases against CAB and racked up massive bills. And we see how that system has outworked now, because we have so many criminals when those CAB cases come to court now, they just roll over because they know they're not going to win. But Foley and Georgie Mitchell, they all thought they were going to beat the system through these legal devices, but it didn't happen. And this is the consequence.
I wouldn't like to be in his shoes.
Oh.
Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.